Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Whole Picture, where we chat with your favorite entrepreneurs about their hobbies, passion projects, and deep interests and the things that keep them going for the long term. Today, we're here with RJ Ahmed, and he is a podcast host and a podcast agency owner. He has done over 150 episodes on his podcast and interviewed amazing people like Russell Brunson and the co-founder of Mind Valley, which is so cool. He serves clients like Josh Forty and Marley Jackson and Steve Larson. So he is definitely amazing at what he does. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Brittany, thank you so much for having me. Super excited for the conversation today.
Yes, me too. And as I mentioned in that intro, you have done over 150 episodes, which I think is so cool now looking back at like we've met, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Um, so it's so cool to see what you have done since then.
thank you.
So the world knows you as the podcast host and as the podcast agency owner. But we want to get into the whole picture and talk about some other things that you do. I just recently saw a post that you were saying about personal branding and like how you have started to do piano and chess and stuff like that. So let's start with one of those. Like, tell me how that started for you, piano. How did that start for you?
Yeah, I would definitely gonna start with piano first because um it's been about like 9 years that I started to learn piano and everything here and there, kind of like as a hobby, you would say. And the purpose was that because like I really liked one of the music in Bollywood that was played on piano, and I was kind of like obsessed around it. And I was like, hey, let me learn how to do it. And again, I didn't have like this like piano keyboard, even like the mini one. I started like playing it on my phone first, just to see like how it works, just to see if I can get good around it and start to play a little bit before I get the other one, which was kind of like a toy version of it. Um, I remember like I spent like 20-30 bucks on it at that time because I was in Saudi Arabia at the moment and I was teaching tuition with my mother. So I get this like um about like 100 bucks a month because of me like assisting my mom in teaching tuition, all that. So I bought this like piano and I started to learn playing it, all that. And uh, I was like, maybe like I can create a YouTube channel around it, you know? So I started my YouTube channel back in like what, like 2015, 9 years ago. And I was almost like 15 years old or somewhere along those lines because I saw these YouTubers like who are also like posting content and making money online, all that, etc. So I thought about, hey, maybe what I'm learning, I can just learn something and I can also like post it across like across YouTube and see how that performs. And that channel also like went crazy. Like 9 years in, like got like 500,000 views from this like little toy piano. At first, one of the video got like 190,000 views, and I was playing WWE theme song, like John Cena's theme song on the piano. But it was like so tiny piano, like everybody was like curious just to see like if the sound of the music can be the same or not. But it was pretty identical of it. Got like 190,000 views, and I'm like, that is insane. Like who came here to like listen that? So that was pretty insane because I was like just learning like WWE music, all that, just by ear. I still don't know how to play it by, um, I still don't know how to play it by sheet musics technically, but I can practice it listening it by ear or like by watching like tutorials and like memorize it and practice it along the way and all that. But later down the road, like I purchased a normal like keyboard sized piano, start playing it because in the mini size you cannot play like left or right hand simultaneously, because of the limited version of keys over it. Exactly, yeah. So I bought the other version so that I can be able to like play piano left and right. But since I had the channel, um, and I came to Pakistan in 2017, uh, and finished my college, didn't got my admission in the university. At that time I stumbled upon like this like online make money online thing, all that, etc. At that point I was like, I love to play piano, but I don't want to be known as pianist. Like I don't want it to be my personal identity, right? I love to do it, but I don't want it to be my personal identity. I don't want to be myself known as that. And that was the very first time I got this like epiphany about it. Like, hey, I would love to do it, but as a hobby, not as a passion. And I don't want to be known or position myself as that kind of person. Even though I didn't knew the word positioning, all that, etc. But in my mind, I was like, I don't want to be known like a pianist, right? So that was kind of like a time when I moved to a different sort of like a thing, like, make money online, all that, etc. And that's how like everything went by. So it was definitely a crazy journey, but that kind of like led me to have the start of like, hey, you can do make money online, all that, etc. Because um, it's so crazy to think about. When I started to learn it on this like mini piano in 2016 or 2017, I wrote an ebook and published it on Kindle on 2017, which was around like 25 Bollywood music you can learn on piano, which are these like piano notes, because like piano have not only these like sheet music, but also have like number of keys, A, B, C, D, E, and the numbers of it. So I wrote it on like Microsoft Word and like created this like ebook and published it on like Amazon KDP. And I was just checking it like last week. I don't know, like 100 copies were sold. Never promoted it. It was just there, like out of
Wow.
a hobby or so. But that was kind of like a side beginning that I never thought like it's gonna happen. I was just checking stats like last week, which was insane to think about. But again, the same thing. Never wanted it to be as kind of like a passion or so. It was just a hobby. So yeah,
Yeah. So one thing that jumps out to me when you're saying that is like, so this was in 2015 when you first, were starting this. And like I'm thinking back to the internet at that point, and it was very different. It's a completely different landscape, even though it's
of
like
course,
only 10 years ago. It's like 10 years in internet time is 30
it's
years.
huge. Yes.
And so at the time, like, did you know what you wanted to do with like your career, or like where were you there? Because you made the jump to like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel from just playing piano. So that's an interesting jump that you made.
Yeah. I was not quite sure about like what I wanted to do, but since I was living in Saudi Arabia and we have this like routine life, we were not kind of like entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial by goals, but I think some people are entrepreneurial by their instincts. Like they have this sort of like inside of it that they want to like do. But because at that time, even when I was doing or teaching tuition with my mother, I remember like I bought this like a sticker copy for like $2, and then I started to sell these like pages of stickers. Like let's say if I had like 10 pages, I still started to sell like one page each for like 50 cents, something along those lines. So like I feel like for some people, their entrepreneurial instincts always stays there, and it just start to comes out as they start to like understand that. But apart from that, like in my mind, it was like I'm gonna get my degree done, maybe like gonna do a job around like my maybe like gonna do computer science, gonna do a job in Saudi Arabia itself, or maybe become a teacher or so. That was the plan I had in my mind before we came to Pakistan. So 2017, we came to Pakistan. Everything got changed because of different culture, different mindset of people, different country, different perspective around people also. So that changed the whole dynamic. And at first, we were kind of like not happy about it. I was personally miserable. I was like, hey, I want to go back. I don't want to be here because we never came to Pakistan prior to that. I was born in Saudi Arabia. um, I lived there for like 17 years, never came to Pakistan, so never understood the joint family culture, all that, etc. So for me, it was chaotic at first. So I really wanted to go back, but of course, like for some reasons we weren't. So I was there. I was like, oh, this is insane. I just never wanted to be here at first place, and I'm right now. I am. So yes, like that changed the whole goals or plans I had while being in Saudi. So that now that gave into a completely different direction, like how things were. So yeah.
And were you like you mentioned like your mom was teaching and you had this like sticker idea, which I think is so funny
Yeah.
because I think that I've heard specifically the sticker story from like other people. Like we all had that like thing, and it was like that showed that we were an entrepreneur like early. Mine was a newsletter. I wrote a newsletter for my neighborhood by hand, every single one,
Mhm.
and sold it door to door. Like it was like Sunshine News or something, and went down the street and was doing that. Like everybody has that like origin story of their entrepreneurship. And so were you unique in that in your family, or did you have like someone in your family who you're like looking to that was like they were also that way, or like did you see people online, or were you just kind of that was the way that you were?
Yeah, I think personally, since we were living in Saudi, so it was not that we had the access of other, let's say, relatives or so. So it was just our our main family, right? Like my brother, my sister, younger sister. Like I'm the eldest of all other siblings. So and my father, mother. So I don't think so. There was like something that it came from somebody else. Um, it was just an idea, right? As I said, like we're kind of like born with this, and then we kind of like explore it more, and then we utilize it on a smaller scale, and then like when we get more opportunities, then we utilize, on a larger scale, all etc. So if I personally think about it, even right now, kind of like the flashback, I personally don't think about that. It actually came from somebody from an entrepreneurial perspective, but of course, like my mom is like definitely like a really hardworking person. She was a teacher at first, when she was in Pakistan. She got married, went to Saudi Arabia, and she started like tuition also. Of course, like some hardworking ethics definitely come through her, but like from the entrepreneurial side of it, or the idea about it, like, oh, I can do this way or that way, or even like this is possible, was not something I personally got, because we had the internet access. But again, the point is like, even 10 years ago, the people who had the internet access, the point is like what to do with it. That's the whole point, right? Like even right now at this age, like when people start out, they have the access of information. Either they're not clear about like what to search, or like what to find, so that they can get the answer they're looking for, right? It's like not the right type of questions that they're getting. They're actually asking to the internet to get the right answers. So yeah, even that time that was the case. So it was not particularly like internet or so. It was more around just like entrepreneurial bug in mind, like, oh, maybe I could like buy that and I could like resell it, and it could make like a little bit of money here and there, all that etc. So that's personally how I think about it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. There is something in an entrepreneur that is like just always looking for that way to not only make money, but like the smart way to make money. Because we
Yes,
all know
yes.
how to make money. Like our parents had jobs and like that is one way, but there's like that part of our brain that is always like, but if I did it this way, I would do it faster or better or something. Do you find that that is like carried you throughout your whole career? Like that is kind of like a value that is driving you as you're doing all the things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say like 100%. There are some basic foundations that always stays there, right? It's like some things, if you think about from entrepreneurial perspective, like always stays. For example, like, uh, be resilient around it. Be smart enough to think about like what could be the other possibilities if you think about it. Not like one thing that was like really strong, even like in me in general, is like even though I was living in Pakistan, I don't like to do victim blaming at all. This is something I hate personally a lot. And if I hear anybody else from Pakistan like to talk about it, I'm like, hey, like the thing is like, I've already like I'm kind of like the example in front of you. Like this is how I done it, and it was not easy at all. But the thing is like it was possible. So always think about like what could be the opportunities that could be. Of course, it can be hard because of like where you live, where you are from, all that, but it's like there are always opportunities there. Just find out those opportunities. Don't come into like victim blaming at all. So I think some of these traits, characteristic, even from a younger age, definitely helps out in when you're getting younger, all that, etc. It helps for sure. Some people are god gifted. Some people have to train for it, right? Some people have to become disciplined enough to be able to like utilize those strengths properly. But some people are like, gifted by nature.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Do you think was it something in the way that you were raised, or is it something inherent in you that had, because like what I'm hearing is there was the entrepreneurial gene in terms of like I'm going to sell this thing and make this money and then like scale and do this, and there's also another part that I'm hearing, which is like no matter what the environment is, I'm going to thrive. And I think entrepreneurs have that trait, and just also some people I meet have it and some people don't. And so do you think that that was something that was instilled in you in your upbringing, or is that like something inherent that like I just am going to win no matter where I am or the situation that I'm in?
I mean, it's like I would say like some of the things happens because of the circumstances or situations. In those cases, it's like, I love like there were some of the guests on my podcast, like they actually said like either you win or you learn, right? So the point was that even if there were like hardships or stuff like that happening right at the moment, who can step up, right? uh, I personally don't want to rely on anybody else to step up and change the fate overall of the whole family or so, if I am capable enough now that I have the ability to take action, maybe that could possibly change the fate of my whole family, I would step up, right? That is something I definitely learned from my mom, because at her time when it was needed, she stepped up. She started teaching tuition, all that, etc., where it was not needed to be done from her side, but again, she stepped up and took that decision, right? Uh, that's exact same thing happened like later down the road when we moved to Pakistan, when things were worse from a financial standpoint, all etc. When it was my personal decision to be like starting to see like how online stuff works, how online business works. It happened because of two reasons. One, I personally didn't like my joint family at all, because now I felt like from living in a family of 5 to living in a family of 20 is like insane, right? Because you never experienced it. Now you're getting these objections, you're getting these like pointers that you never asked for. You never asked for the advice you're getting now. All those things is kind of like that you're not used to. Now you're getting it, and it's completely culturally different how you were used to, like for like 17, 18 years. So yeah, later down the road, it's like I was like, hey, somebody have to step up. My siblings maybe can't, but if I am aware of it right now, maybe I can see how that works. And that's exactly what happened. And later on, I moved out from that joint family. I moved my personal family to a different city, all that, etc. But that's exactly what I did, right? So I think some things, values, or some habits you definitely learn from your parents, and it definitely comes from your parents for sure, because you see how hardworking they are, and you kind of like try to like borrow that from them, and be able to like utilize it in your life, but in a different manner now. So yeah, some habits definitely comes from it, and like this of like me stepping up when no one can was definitely like came from my mom for sure.
Yeah. It's also making me think of like extreme ownership, that book that was going around for a while. Like
Yes, yes.
it's making me think of that because in your situation, it was extreme ownership of the situation and of what you wanted out of life and how you wanted to live your life. But also like that skill set that you were building or inherently had or was instilled, like that skill set now, like as an agency owner, I'm sure
Mhm.
you're finding like, we all have that experience where it's like someone dropped the ball or something got miscommunicated, and like that's where we, like as an agency owner or somebody who is like leading a company, is like, okay, well, what did I like, how does it come back to me? Because it always does eventually, right? So do you find that?
Yeah, so one of the things I try to, again, like the other people working in the agency are also just people, right? They have like different life going on, and they are coming from a different culture, background, or habits. But one of the things that I tend to like let them understand is like you have to take extreme ownership, as you mentioned. It's like you cannot come up into a victim mentality. Oh, that's not happening and all that, etc. Try to see like what is the possibility looks like, make a decision around it. If that works, amazing. If not, you learned around it, right? It's not like for every particular thing, you're coming back, all that, etc. Try once, because what that will allow you to do is like it will allow you to explore things without judgment, right? What happens like when either it's a small team or a big team, all that, etc. What happens like people lack creative controls within the teams, and why it happens is because like every team member is getting dictated about like how to do stuff, and then they have a lack of ability in learning new things by their own, right? Because they're like, hey, this is rigorously how you want to follow it. Just follow it as it is, and that's it. Of course, there are some things need to be followed just to make sure that the quality does not get deteriorated. But there are some elements of it where you can have them have creativity or have creative control around it, so that they can learn stuff by their own, and not relying on us all the time. So, and even like from our delivery standpoint, if you think about from that perspective too, we have to like give them extreme ownership. Like, hey, if something been assigned to you, technically my job from here is done. And if I'm relying on you, like, hey, if I'm sleeping at like 5 a.m. and you said you're gonna do it in the next 3 hours, well, I've relied on you, right? It's like now when I wake up, I'm expecting it to be done. And if it's not, then my personal reliability was ruined just because I trusted you. So stuff like that, in that case, or even from a team perspective, yes, extreme ownership is really important. So yeah, some of these traits are really important from a team member perspective to learn, because they cannot always get back to me, which happens, of course, from every team standpoint. It happens where they're coming back to the owner or stuff like that. But like they have to learn how to make decisions by their own too. So yes, it does affect 100%.
Yeah, it's like extreme ownership works as long as everyone has it, right?
Yes.
Like it's on me ultimately as the leader of the company, but like it's also on that person. Like it's if we all are taking it, then it's like it works so well. But if like only one person is taking it, then it can
Yeah,
foster this like not great environment. Yeah.
of course, 100%.
So you mentioned, so 2017 is when you did this ebook. Is that also when you moved? Is like right
Yes.
around that time? Okay.
Yeah, somewhere
And
along those lines.
so were you doing that like to kind of like scale into the next part of this like online world that you were seeing like some of these YouTubers do? Or like what was your decision to like start that aspect of your journey?
Yeah, so when I was learning, again, I had that small piano at that time, and I published the ebook prior of me coming to Pakistan. So the reason why I even like started ebook, because when I was learning how to play piano, all that, etc., I saw these like YouTubers had these like Kindle books that they were selling on Kindle. I was like, okay, like interesting. What's that? So I started to like search on internet of what is ebook, like how to publish on how to publish it on Amazon and the process of it, or like how much can I get paid, all that, etc. So I found all these elements of how to do it. And again, I didn't had a really good devices, for example, like not a good phone or laptop. So what I started to do, even on my phone, I started to like write these piano notes, and just kind of like editing it around here and there, like partially doing it. Took me like a month or so to write like 50 Bollywood songs from in a piano version so that people can learn uh key by key by key. So because not everybody able to like read sheet musics, because it's not easy, not everybody can do it. So it was like the key, the name of the keys were displayed there, like, hey, press A, and the next tune is like, okay, A, press, let's say, C sharp, all that, etc. So they are aware of like what keys to press to be able to play that song, right? So yeah, like I started just working on my phone, and learned how to do it on Kindle, and it's just published it. At that time I didn't have like any plan of like, hey, I'm gonna make money online. That was something that is not in my mind, that I'm gonna be able to like do something like that. It was kind of like, again, as a hobby. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that entrepreneurial bug, okay, you can also make money online too, that's great. So just creating that out and just like putting it out there, and then having no idea what to do with it. And it was just there, sitting there on Amazon for like really long. And I never promoted it. That was a fun fact. Like I never promoted that time till now, because I didn't have like any idea what to do with it. Right. But it was just there. I was like, okay, cool. My part at least is done. So now if anybody gonna ask for me, because people start commenting on my videos like, hey, can I get notes, all that, etc., I can like let them know like, hey, this is the book, you can get it if you want. So yeah, that's how it started. But I never personally thought about even after that, because that book launched in like early 2017, but I started to figure out like internet stuff really in like late 2018, somewhere along the lines of like September, October. So that like 1.5 year, I never thought about, or it never came into my mind that, hey, I'm gonna do something online. It was like, again, I was doing it just as a hobby. I was like just putting it out there. Cool, if people gonna come, cool. I'm gonna make some money online, all the etc. If not, then totally fine. All that, because I was still making like $100 a month from my tuition, and around my friend circle, I was still making decent money, because all of them in their teens, and I'm also in their teens, in my teens, and I'm still making some money compared to them who were making like none, right? So I knew like, hey, I'm making some money out there here and there, so I'm completely fine, good to go. But yeah, never thought about like I'm gonna make something like a profession, like making money online, all that. Never in my mind I have thought about that it's gonna happen.
Wow. Okay. So when did that start to happen for you? Because you mentioned at a certain point you were like, I don't want to be the piano guy. So like
Yes.
what happened right there?
So what happened was, it's crazy Asian culture here. So what happened, like when we came to Pakistan, I finished my college from 2017 to 18. I have not got admission in the university. And again, because of like us not being aware about like how university processes works here, uh, 1 year still in a new country is pretty much like new, especially when you're living in a smaller city. But we were living in a fairly small city at the time, compared to like where I was supposed to be getting admission, which is the capital. I was not aware of the whole processes, so like I missed my admission, and everybody from a relative standpoint started to like taunt, like, hey, he have not got admission in the university. My cousin got the admission, which was like crazy, all that. So I started to get these like taunts, which was like insane, common Asian thing, just so you know. So yeah, at that time, like I stumbled around an ad around Shopify on Facebook because everybody was using Facebook still because it was like pretty accessible, all that. So I stumbled around an ad by Sebastian Gomez. He was like pretty well known at the time around ecom. He was doing like a lot of drop shipping. So then I got to know about like, oh, drop shipping is something. I was like, cool, let me do some research. And they mentioned the process of like working on Shopify, all that. And I right after watching the video by Sebastian, I started working on like creating a Shopify store, and was working on it, all that. After like creating the store, I sat there, I was like, okay, how am I gonna get paid? Like I'm doing all this, but how am I gonna get paid? And then I realized Stripe and PayPal is not here in Pakistan, for just so you know. So I was like, oh, that's a bummer. Stripe and PayPal is not here in Pakistan. But then I watched the other video by Sebastian where he was mentioning about like, hey, you can form a company in US, you can form an LLC, all that, etc., to be able to form a Stripe, get a Stripe account, and be able to like receive payments from clients, all that. I was like, okay, cool. So the cost of forming LLC was $126 because I was forming in Delaware, and that was the only saving I had, somewhere along those lines. Because again, when I came to Pakistan, of course, I was having this like savings of me getting paid from my mother, from me providing like service of tuition. So I had this like saving. So I had somewhere along those lines of like 120, $130, somewhere along those lines, and the cost of forming company was $126. And I remember, as I said, oh, it's like somebody have to take extreme ownership. I was all alone in my room and there was nobody in the room. It was like dead silence. And I'm the sole person who is supposed to be taking a decision that could be good or bad based off like what I'm gonna do with it. And I just like pressed the button on the website and it cleared the invoice. And I was like, oh, like now I've spent my whole money. Now I have to like work on it just to make sure like if things goes right or wrong, like let's see how that works. The only advantage I personally had was it was my own money, right? I didn't took money from my parents. So like even if it goes to zero, well, of course it's a loss, but at least it's like I've not risked my parents' money or their assets, all that, etc. It was my money. They could be like, oh, it's bad it happened, but let's get back to work. That was definitely in my mind. That is one of the reason why I even like invested that. So I can still remember like when it happened and I got the Stripe account, but now I have no funds. I have no funds to run ads. I have no funds to source products, even if it's a drop shipping model, but still like have to have some funds. So again, instead of ending up in a victim mentality, I did a post on Instagram and I had like what, like 300, 400 followers, all friends, relatives, all etc. I did a post. If anybody is interested in investing in my company, let me know. That is a post I did. Instead of me crying up in the corner with a victim mentality, now I don't have the money for running ads, or like I don't have the money to like source products. I did that post on Instagram, and it's still in my archive on my Facebook. So some of my friends reached out to me and they were like, what are you doing? And I explained that this like business model, I need like 30,000 rupees, which is like somewhere along the lines of like $100 now. 30,000 rupees for 30% of the equity. There were like three of my friends who took like 10% each. And I gave them like 30% equity of the company. Because I need some sort of funds to be able to like run it and test it and see how that performs. Uh, Again, the point is like in the beginning, your asset is your character. That's the whole point. Because when you're reaching out to your friends or you're reaching out to your relatives, based off your character, they would invest. Uh, because you don't have any other social proof. The only social proof you have is you're kind, you say what you do, you try to commit what you do, all that, etc. Nothing else. At that time, there's nothing social proof you have where people can trust you apart from your own character. That's it. And that's the only reason why even like they tried to invest. They were like, cool, let's invest. Let's see if that work out. And if it doesn't, our loss or our learning. So yeah, that's exactly how I started out. And even when I launched the store, it didn't work out at first. I launched my store, as I mentioned, like in 2018, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It's like the biggest time of ecom, but it didn't work out at all. It failed because I didn't know how to run ads. I didn't know how to write copies. I didn't know how to promote products, all that, or how to find winning products. Half of my money was gone at that time. So but still I was trying to like figure out some other options because I'm like, hey, I still have like almost like $50. Let's see how that goes. And all that. So that was kind of like the beginning of it, of like how it eventually like started out from like me coming to Pakistan and then be able to like end up in a situation. But yeah, that's exactly like how it started out from there.
It's so interesting that you're saying like your character is your asset, and that is, it's so much the case when you don't have social proof, as you mentioned. I also feel like it's the case when you do have social proof, because there's some, like you and I know we're in this like kind of world together. There are some people who are really well known, and people are like they're great, but they're kind of not great to work with. Like there's
Hmm,
some people that you
of
just know
course.
of, and we like as personal brands, like even if we have agencies and things, like we're still kind of a personal brand always. Even Tony Robbins is a personal brand. He's has a massive team, but it's so critical that we're like people who people want to work with and who have like a trustworthy reputation, you know?
Yes,
And I
100%.
think on top of all of your qualities that are amazing that make you trustworthy, like what you just said at the end, where you're like, well, we still have $50. What can we do now? Like you have that mentality that's like, even if it's not working, it's going to work eventually. Right? Like that, is that
Yeah.
how you were looking at this? Like at no point you were like, oh, we'll just go do something else.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was like, I've also invested my own money and I've invested this, and we are not kind of like bankrupt yet. We have some things over there, right? So we have some funds. We can test some things out, or we can learn what went wrong. Uh, Eventually, that e-com store, of course, didn't work out for us, but that $50 we had gave us the realization of like what we need to do next, right? And even that was the point when I was just scrolling through Instagram, and there were a lot of like motivational or inspirational pages, accounts. That was the time when I saw the post, and it was like, this guy have made like $3 million in 90 minutes. Russell Brunson, co-founder of ClickFunnels, and I was telling to my mom, like, how come this guy from a stage made $3 million in 90 minutes? That is insane. That was the very first time I actually got to know about like who Russell Brunson is. At first, because it was kind of like the similar time I got it online and all that. So yeah, and then stumbled upon the world of funnels, of like what the funnel is. That gave me the idea about like, hey, what I have right now, which like the last $50 I have, I can possibly utilize, because at that time, like affiliate marketing from ClickFunnels standpoint was like on the peak. Like there were a lot of amazing people promoting like ClickFunnels from an affiliate standpoint. So I was like watching these like orange bars, which was the affiliate dashboard they had at that time. I was watching these orange bars. I was like, maybe I want to learn that. Let's see how that goes. So I stumbled upon a guy. His name was Paul Motley. He was like one of ClickFunnels Dream Car winner, and I got on a call with him. He provided like a free call just because I ended up on a ClickFunnels trial with him, and I saw his like affiliate dashboard. He made like $30,000, and I was like, is that real? Is that real that you made? He was like, yeah, mate, because he was British, right? Yeah, mate,
Mm.
it's real. So he just kind of like refreshed the dashboard or so. It was real, and it was like eye opener for me that it is possible to make money online, because the first thing what happens at first is like we're not even like sure if that's even possible, right? Because we are not connected with the people who have made it, or like who have made that amount of money. So for us, it's kind of like feels unrealistic at that standpoint. But I saw that guy like making like $30,000. That gave me like insane, the eye opener for me. And then I started using ClickFunnels, and again I had $50. Not It's not enough for me to pay for ClickFunnels plan, which was like 97 a month. And there was a guy, his name was Nico. He was again retention manager inside of ClickFunnels. after my trial ended, he hopped on a call. He was like, "Hey, did you like ClickFunnels?" I was like, "Yeah, but I'm still figuring this out." And he extended my trial for 2 months. It is insane to think about, and I'm always grateful to him, and I always like meet him. I always like text him because I'm still connected with him on Facebook. I found his Facebook, and I always remember him, and I always send him message every now and then just to see like how he's how is everything going. But like he kept extending my trial for 2 months from January to March, just allowing me to figure this out. Uh, He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you 2 weeks more, just see how it works." And I was like testing this out here and there just to see like how it performed until to a point where I was able to sold one funnel away challenge to a guy who needed it on Facebook, and I made my first $100 online. It was 9th March 2019, and I was like, "This is real. Like this is it. Like I've figured it out like how to make money online." And because $100 in a day for me was like 2 months of like hostel expense when I finally got the admission in the university. And that 9th March 2019 was insane day for me. I can never forget when that person got closed and I, got this like orange bar on my affiliate dashboard, made $100. I was like, "Oh wow, this is possible. This is real. It is happening right now." So yeah, that was definitely a crazy thing for me, and it only happened because my desire for it to work was there. I actually talked about it like in some of my reels, but it was in Urdu, and I was talking about like there are only two things that need to be there, or like one of two things need to be there for you to be successful. It is either your need or your desire. If your need or desire, like either one of those is there, you're gonna make it work. If none of those is there, then it's like then you don't have any you don't have any ends for it to try and make it work. But if you have a need or if you have a desire, then it's gonna be like, hey, I have to make it work regardless, right? So in my case, that was the case. I was like, hey, I've already got in. Of course, it was tough. It was difficult, and I was getting frustrated. And at one point, I was thinking about like I feel like everything is a scam because I'm not able to make money. Like everything is a scam. But when I made that $400, it changed my whole perspective around like online stuff. Like this is real. And from that point of time to now, which is about like 6 years now, almost, never it happened like I never made a money online after that. So for me, trying and struggling for 6 months to later that time like making my first sale till now, it kind of like growed out eventually, right? But at 4 6 months, that was the hardest one for me, figuring out all this all that etc. But after that 9th March, like my belief was there, like, hey, it is possible, I can do it. Now it's all based off what I do, what I learn, how I implement stuff. And if I don't make money online, that's completely my fault because it is possible to do it.
Interesting. So that was, yeah, because I was like looking at the dates here, being like, okay, you're saying that you did the ebook, in 2017, and like then you did the Shopify stuff, and you're like going, and then March 9th, 2019, like that's a period of time. So like during that time, you never were like, even if you felt like, oh, this is, we all have felt like that, like
Of
everyone else is
course.
making it and I'm not, so something's wrong with the world because it's like instinct, right? But you kept doing it. And so during that time where you had this piano channel, had you made the conscious choice to keep that as a hobby and then like pursue this as a career, or were you trying to grow like both at the same time, or like what were you doing in that vein?
Yeah, I mean, like all I was doing, like if I get like a free time, I would like record the content for piano and just like kind of like post it with having like no intention in mind. Like if it get views, great. If it not, completely fine. All I've done is like I'm learning something, let me post it, right? Again, out of a hobby. It was never meant to be like a real business model or like a real creator channel that I'm planning to like grow or be able to like monetize it that way. It was always like, hey, I learned this new song because I liked it. I learned it, I recorded it, I posted it, that's it. Now I'm not even like related to vanities of like what's gonna happen with that or changing my moods because just because I've not got enough views. So yeah, even in the meantime, I was still posting on my piano channel here and there, but it was like my personal emotions or my personal goals was never associated with it at all from a monetary standpoint. It was like, hey, cool. If it grew out, great. It would happen. Like got like 500,000 views, which is like I'm still shocked like how it happened from a toy piano, which is like insane. Uh, yeah. So I was still posting it, posting content around it, but I was never tied to it. Like, hey, I wanna make sure I grow it.
Yeah. So do you feel like, because I know from having like I've had all kinds of side kind of hobbies, passions. One was like around anxiety and one was around like I had all these different kind of side things I was growing. And what I realized when I was doing that is like I had this kind of outlet where I was like I was kind of just in testing and like fun mode over there, where like I would just like do it when I felt like it. And it kind of I felt like unblocked me in my other like in my career because I was like responding to people's comments. Like you were saying, people were like asking for the notes and stuff. And so you were just like able to just give people what they want. You were like solving problems and doing this fun thing. Do you feel like that filled you up kind of on the other side or was like beneficial to you to have that channel?
Yeah, I personally feel like right now, at this moment, we have a different sort of like a marketer lens or, a different lens that we are kind of like aware of. At that time, there was nothing as per awareness for me, even though like I didn't even knew the word autoresponder at first. At first, when I was watching and I was like opting into like all of these like free trainings or courses, I was like, how come I'm magically getting these emails? Like, what is searching on YouTube around like how to get automatic emails if I enter my email somewhere. And then I got to know about the term like it's called autoresponders. I was like, okay, that's cool. So I feel like some of those things were helpful, but the point was like I was not quite aware of like what am I doing really. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, the awareness was not really there. But again, maybe the gut instinct was there, like, hey, I have to do this as the next step, but it was not awareness. So I personally don't think about like if that actually like particularly helped me in my next step of it, because I felt like that was like a completely new chapter with having no idea what to do and starting again from zero on its own without having any prerequisite ideas, all that. So yeah, that's how I personally think about it. That even right now, if I'm thinking about it right now, I personally never feel like, hey, that personally helped me from this side of it because I was not even like aware of what I'm doing over there. That's the whole point. So yeah.
Yeah. It totally makes sense. Yeah, it always like there's that saying that's like hindsight is 2020. Like when you're looking back, you can be like, totally, I see how all these things work together. But in the moment, we are reactionary for the most part because
Yes.
that's our life. So I think it's cool that you had these like parallel things happening, that you were doing this, that you're doing that. And now, of course, you are a podcast host. You talk to entrepreneurs all day and you help them produce their podcasts. You have this agency. So talk a little bit about like the inception of your show and like where that came from, in your journey of things.
Yes. So as I mentioned, like when I started to make when I made my first $100 on 9th March 2019, stumbled upon like this whole ClickFunnels world and started to watch content by Spencer Makeham, Steve Larson, especially, and then enrolled in One Funnel Away challenge, and then they were like Steve Larson like talk about like the whole 30 days like with his energy coming up, all that, and Russell and all the other like two Comma Club award winners with the 30 days challenge they had, all that. Um, when I started reading like .com secrets at first, I started to like, realize like Russell in his like series of books, he was always talking about like being a reporter, right? And he was talking about like you can be able to like borrow other people's audiences by having them on your show. That idea was like really fascinating to me. I was like, isn't it so insane that we don't need to build our audiences from scratch and we can borrow others by having them on the show? And if they talk good about you or if they endorse you, would love to promote your product, their fans will blindly come to check your products out. That idea like blew me away. I was like, oh, that is insane. So I was pretty much like closed after that, like, hey, I have to start a podcast. But of course I had a lot of challenges. One, English is not my first language. I live in Pakistan. So I didn't even knew like how to speak English like properly. The problem we have is like we have English in our mind, but we just don't know how to articulate it properly. Like it's kind of like a block we have, which is quite obvious because again, not our language. But the point is, victim mentality is not my thing at all. I'm like, hey, these are not my strengths now. Let me learn it slowly and how we can go from there. So the very first interview I did ever was with Alex Elliott. she had this like a program called like One Group Away Challenge at that time, and she was like, hey, I'm doing these like press tours, and I was like, hey, I don't know, my group is not that big, 100 members, like, would you like to join? She was like, absolutely, let's do it. And I didn't even know how to use Zoom. She gave her Zoom link, and I joined her Zoom account, and we streamed as if like it's my Zoom, and like we pretending it to be like, hey, that was my Zoom, and we're doing it all that, etc. And I remember I was in my hostel at that time. It was 4 a.m. I was sitting on my mattress, and I had like pillow on top of me as for a cushion, and then I had a laptop on top of it, and I was using like PlayStation hand free. That's it. And I had a bulb in the back of me, so I was completely looking like dark. That's how I started out, because I was like, hey, if I cannot start it out right now with this, what I have, I cannot later on can get better over time, right? So I have to start like this. And I remember like I heard some of the content from Russell, and he was talking about like you have to demonstrate your audience as a leader. It's like you have to show it to them as a leader. I was like, if I want to show to my audience as a leader, then I have to show it from my current state. So why not doing it this way? So at 4 a.m., started recording the podcast episode with her, which was great because it was the initial push I needed at first to start everything out. And then I did like 2 or 3 episodes here and there. Didn't labeled it as podcast, but when Russell launched his Traffic Secrets book, at that time I was like, hey, maybe I wanna officially start it as a podcast and label it as podcast. So I think around March, I reached out to Spencer Makeham, and prior of me reaching out to him, I was providing value in his community, in his audience, because the very first thing when you plan to reach out to somebody is to create your existence. If they don't know who you are and you don't have enough credentials, why would they say yes? So that's something I learned, that hey, I cannot ask him to be on my podcast. He will not respond because he don't know who I am. I have to make my existence enough so that at least he can understand maybe I could be a valuable person, or somewhere along those lines. So I started to provide value to his community, reached out to him, and he was like, hey, I would love to do it, but let's do it after like Funnel Hacking Live, because after like Funnel Hacking Live, the world shut down, COVID came along. I was like, cool. I waited like 2 months for Spencer to be able to like get done, like get back to his sanity, and be able to like start from there. And then I reached out to him. I was like, hey, would love to have you on the show. It was like, cool, let's do it. So that's how I started. It happened like March 2020, 5 years ago almost. And again, I messed it big time, just so you know, because I was so excited of, it's like when you meet kind of like your heroes, the people you learn from, you just get overly excited, right? And that's the problem what most people do when they do podcast. It's like you don't need to be overly excited. You don't need to be just another fan doing the conversation with them. You can be respectful with them, but you just have to make sure you maintain your authority, because at the end of a day, your podcast is your house. So you're the one who is leading them. Uh, if there's a normal person coming in your house, even if you're a prime minister, doesn't matter. Like you're the person who is leading them because you know the ins and outs of it. So I just got like overly excited, all that, and I knew like I messed it up. I knew it. Like I messed it that interview up at first, but that led the start of it, and I started doing like consistently episode after episode, all that. I remember like I did like 52 episodes consistently, so for the whole year I was like doing like consistent episode where I've never missed a week. And that got this like attention to the market, where they were like, how are you bringing these like guests on the show? Because if you think about from that perspective, I was living in Pakistan, I was 20 at the time, and I was like interviewing these guys like Akbar Sheikh, Catherine, Steve, Spencer. Everybody was like, how the hell are you doing it? Like, what's the secret? I was like, there's no secret. It's like I am reaching out to these people. I'm using this like compounding effect. Like if I interviewed Spencer, just leveraging his name to reach out to the other person, to have that other person out and doing it on a consistent basis, right? But when I started the podcast, in the back of my mind, I was like, hey, maybe later down the road, I will get Russell Brunson on the show. I had no idea how to do it or like what's the process would look like. But I was like, hey, maybe later, you never know. Um, there's an amazing quote by Steve Jobs. You can always connect the dots, moving backward. At first, you cannot. You have no idea what you're planning, and all that. But yeah, that's how my podcast eventually started out. Started doing like all these episodes. Started to learn the pattern of like how to become a better host, how to become a better listener, how to not interrupt them, how to ask good questions, And slowly I started like interview all these like people who are pretty well known in our industry. And later down the road, went on and interviewed Russell Brunson on 100th episode and wrapped up the season 1. So yeah, that's a whole story of like how we started the podcast.
I think it's so cool that he was episode 100 too. It's like the mile mark, for you.
It was insane. It was kind of like a dream way to like end the season 1. It, I never thought about like it's gonna happen because I tried the first attempt on like 50. Haven't got the opportunity to have him on the show anyway. But like getting him on like 100 milestone, that was like amazing.
So cool. And I mean, I'm just seeing these themes like so much for you where you like number one are just consistent, like so consistent. And you are like so just there's a resiliency beyond like consistency. There's like a resiliency of just like that didn't work, let me try this. That didn't work, let me try this. And it's reminded me of like James Wedmore talks about you can be a scientist or a victim. Like so something happened and you can either like engineer your way out and be like, okay, what went wrong with it? Or you can just stay in that place. And it seems like you just
Hmm.
consistently are the scientist in it. Like, let me try to do it this way or that way.
Yeah.
So now you are interviewing amazing entrepreneurs. You have done over 150 episodes. What is next for you? Like, what are you wanting to achieve next in your podcast journey?
Yeah, I mean, like now, I definitely have the plan to explore more stories from people. I um the thing what I've personally experienced by doing the episodes was like when I got Russell on the episode and like I wrapped up my season 1. At first, of course I want to network with people, I want to learn from people, all that. But again, what I said earlier is like they have to be need or desire, right? Like the desire was done. It was like, oh wow, like the goal I had at first is over. And that's why like everybody like always says is like enjoy the journey, because when you get to your destination then you're gonna figure out like what to do next. So for me, that's exactly what happened like at that point. And I was like talking about it like I think last week I did a live on Facebook and I was talking about it like in the past like 4 or 5 years, like in the first 2 years I did 100 episodes. In the next two I did 50. And I was personally not quite happy about it. I was like, I did 50% less episodes in the past 2 years compared to the first two I had. So definitely my goal right now this time is to have more conversation with people. It does not have to be like super like A-listers. It can be those people out there who know what they're doing but they can articulate it really well. um we can have like some amazing experts, but if they don't know what to say or how to say it, then I mean like the audience will not gonna find it valuable enough. So definitely the goal is to have more conversations with people on the podcast, and from different aspect of life, who can like at least communicate their point clearly, and then go from there. So that's definitely my personal goal is for at least the next 2 years to have like far more conversations that what I missed in the last 2 years right now. So that's definitely one of the goals with the podcast.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So this audience, people listening it's a lot of online coaches, a lot of online experts. If they're resonating with you and your messaging either and want to come on the show or they have a podcast and they want to use your services, they resonate with your mindset and the way that you do business, what's the best way for people to find you and reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way to find me or reach out to me is through Facebook or Instagram. Just search RJ Ahmed. You're gonna find me over there. Reach out to me. Let me know like you've heard the podcast with Brittany, and we would love to catch up with you. That's the best way to reach out.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for this. I think it was just so cool to hear your perspective on things and hear like this unexpected journey that you went on that brought you to podcasting that started with piano and just this desire to learn a skill in a way that is unconventional. You didn't learn sheet music, you just learned by ear. So I think your story is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for